Hey everyone, I'm Melanie from Streamline Legal, where we help law firms get the most out of their practice management software. Tonight we're talking about email, and I want to know if your email is urgent. I want to know how many messages you get a day that are so urgent you need to respond to them immediately. I find that there are a lot of attorneys and paralegals and legal assistants and people working in law firms that put a lot of urgency on their email when it isn't necessarily warranted. So the first thing that happens is we get an email, we see it pop up, we hear a ding, we get a notification, and we feel like we need to respond right away. And we need to take a step back and evaluate that and take a look at how we want to respond to that email as opposed to doing it immediately. So there's a lot of different tricks and hacks, and I'm sure you've heard a bunch of them. But what I want to talk to you about is what the urgency is for those emails that are coming into your inbox. Because what happens is when we see an email come in, that's because the person that sent it to us feels either an urgency or some need to share that information with us. It doesn't necessarily mean that we need to know the information at the time when we receive it. So of course we want the information, but we need to figure out how to handle it so that we're not feeling like we constantly need to jump in response to our email inbox. And so what happens is we start letting people that are emailing us set the priorities for our day or set the priorities for our inbox. And so just because someone sends it at that time doesn't mean it's a priority for that time for me, the person receiving the email. Now, I know that's hard for senders to understand sometimes because especially if we're talking about a practice area like family law. A lot of times our family law clients are in some type of crisis and we do want to help them, of course. And so we see that email come in and we want to respond as quickly as possible. But the reality is that every client is going through their own concerns and having their own problems, and they all think that theirs are the most important. And the reality is we can't respond to them all at the exact same time. So we do have to come up with ways to determine how we're going to determine our own urgency and our own priorities and not let the people bringing stuff into our inbox determine those for us. So one of the ways we can look at this or think about this is as if it was a regular snail mail. So when the snail mail comes in, usually people aren't jumping for it. Usually it maybe, I don't know if it's anything like my house, but it sits around for a little while. We eventually walk over to it, open it, read it, and get the information that we need. But we're not always jumping to respond immediately with a return letter. Not to mention the idea that if we're talking about email, then if it was an emergency or urgent, I'm pretty sure that these people would be calling you on the phone, they would be texting you, they would use another form of communication that's more instant in that kind of a scenario. So I would highly encourage you guys, when you are taking on new clients, make sure your engagement letter or some of the first documents that you give to your clients do talk about a communication policy. What's the best way for them to communicate with you? What can they expect for a response? We want to make sure that they're not expecting an immediate response to emails, an immediate response to text messages necessarily. What's the best way? Do they need to phone you if it's an emergency? Define what an emergency is, so that we're not having these types of messages come into our email to begin with. The other thing that I would highly recommend that you do is create your own task list outside of your inbox. Don't use your inbox as a task list to determine what you need to do. A lot of people will mark the messages unread after they've already read it so that it stays in their inbox, star it, highlight it, whatever your email program allows for. And we don't necessarily want to do that because then it remains in our inbox and it remains absorbing our attention and our thoughts. And so if we can move it to a separate place where we can view it when we're working on our tasks, when we're in a work mode, then that's going to be a lot more useful than having it in the inbox where we have to go back to find it and see it and reference it, and at the same time see new emails that have come in. So if we can move our task list out of our inbox, I think that will go a long way towards helping us stay focused and not having that Pavlovian response, if you will, to emails coming into our inbox. So please do take this under consideration and let us know if we can help. The easiest way to do this is to set aside times to not check your email. To check your email in the morning, check your email midday, check your email at the end of the day, but don't have the inbox constantly up and notifying you. Turn off all notifications, turn off all opportunities for us to get distracted by that email. And that way, when we are focusing on the email, we can be more focused and help our clients that much better. Thanks for joining me tonight. Have a great evening.